Four cousins vanished without a trace on an ordinary autumn afternoon in 1999. No witnesses, no clues, no footprints, nothing. Their family shattered. The town haunted. 6 months later, the kids were suddenly found alive, but changed in ways no one could explain. The silence they brought back was more chilling than their disappearance. And for 6 long years, the mystery stayed buried, until a single forgotten object uncovered the horrifying truth. This is not just a story about a disappearance. It's about secrets so dark they bend reality, about a place you'll wish never existed, and a truth you won't believe, even when it's right in front of you. Watch till the very end. Every second matters. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on the bell so you never miss a story that will keep you up at night. It began with a scream. Not the kind torn from a throat in terror, but the sharp, joyful shriek of a child playing. 4 of them, actually, cousins, tumbling across dry leaves and rocks at the edge of Black Hollow Creek, just beyond the tree line behind the Martin family property in Dorley, Washington. It was June 19th, 1999, a Saturday. The kind of day summer stretches wide open, long, golden, and endless. They were supposed to be back before dark. Emily Martin was 12 and the oldest of the 4. Her younger brother, Aaron, was 10, quiet, observant, with a fascination for collecting stones. Their cousins, Maya and Jonah Reyes, siblings aged 11 and 9, were visiting from Spokane for the weekend. They've been close since birth, the kind of cousins who grew up more like siblings. Together, they were a pack. A secret club with handmade badges and whispered codes and stories about monsters that lived in the woods but never crossed the circle of safety they made with sticks and stones. At 4:16 p.m., Emily yelled back toward the house, "We're going to the creek." Her mother, distracted by potato salad and backyard chatter, raised a hand without looking. That would be the last time any of the parents would hear their children's voices. At 7:03 p.m., with dusk falling and the fireflies beginning their quiet dance in the tall grass, the call to dinner went unanswered. It was Aaron's father, Mark Martin, who first noticed the silence. "They're still not back?" he asked, standing with a beer can loosely gripped, watching the woods. The laughter that had filled the air for hours was gone now, like a radio switched off mid-song. "They probably got caught up playing," replied Elena Reyes, Maya, and Jonah's mother, brushing crumbs from her skirt. "You know how they are when they're together." But unease had already begun to ripple beneath the surface, quiet and cold. By 7:30, flashlights were retrieved from drawers. Voices called into the trees. "Emily, Aaron, Jonah, Maya." No answers. The forest responded only with the sounds of birds returning to roost. By 8 o'clock, panic began to bloom. They split up. Men headed north toward the river bend, the women toward the old quarry trail. The terrain was familiar. The children had played there dozens of times. But there were no footprints, no trampa de gras, no signs of them anywhere. At 9:10 p.m., a call was placed to the Dorley Police Department. Officers arrived within 20 minutes, skeptical but professional. They took statements, organized a grid search. By midnight, over 30 people, neighbors, local volunteers, and off-duty officers, were combing the woods. Helicopters joined by morning, their searchlights slicing through thick mist and dense branches. Still nothing, not a single clue. No surprints, no discarditos, no torn fabric. It was as if the children had dissolved into air. The news spread quickly. By Monday, their faces were on local stations and flyers plastered across gas station windows. A hotline was established. Tips poured in, sightings, suspicions, vague dreams, but none held water. The creek became a place of dread. Rumors spread like weeds. Some whispered of animal attacks, others of cults, of old mines, of things beneath the ground. The town of Dorley changed. Smiles grew shorter. Eyes darted in corners. Trust withered. Mark and Jennifer Martin turned their living room into a war room. Maps, pinned strings, news clippings. They stopped sleeping in their bedroom, choosing instead to stay near the phone in case it rang. Elena and Roberto Reyes stayed in town long after their visit was meant to end. Roberto quit his job. Elena joined a volunteer search group. They camped outside the ranger station, filed missing persons reports in neighboring states, appeared on every morning show that would have them. For weeks, helicopters scanned the surrounding area. Dogs were brought in. Divers searched the creek. Psychics were consulted in secret. They found nothing. Not even a backpack. Jennifer began waking up screaming. Roberto stopped talking for days at a time. Elena kept packing lunches no one would eat. Mark punched holes in the wall. Their once vibrant family became shadows of people they used to be. And time, cold, heartless time, marched forward. By the end of that summer, hope had grown brittle. By fall, it had begun to rot. 6 months passed. On December 22nd, 1999, a snowstorm swept through Dorley. Power lines fell. Roads closed. The town, already half empty from holiday travel, fell into silence again. That's when the phone rang. At 3:37 a.m., Mark and Jennifer's landline screamed through the quiet. Mark, who had taken to sleeping in a chair by the window, answered with a groggy, breathless, "Hello." What he heard made his knees buckle. A man's voice, clipped and cold. "Go to the old ranger cabin on Echo Ridge. They're there." Then the line went dead. Mark didn't stop to think. He grabbed his coat, keys, and was halfway down the street before remembering to call Elena and Roberto. The police were alerted en route. Echo Ridge had been abandoned for years. The forest had reclaimed the path. Snow clung to every branch, silence pressing in like cotton. The cabin stood crooked and half-rotted, but the door was open, just barely. Inside, 4 children sat on the floor, huddled together beneath a single threadbare blanket. They looked older, gaunt, hollow-eyed, but they were alive. Maya was the first to look up, her lips cracked and trembling. "Don't turn off the lights," she whispered. "Please." The children were rushed to the hospital, their parents trailing behind with breathless sobs and prayers. They were severely dehydrated, malnourished, cold to the bone, but otherwise untouched. Physically, the questions came fast. Where had they been? Who took them? What had happened? But the children wouldn't speak. Not at first. They seemed afraid of the dark, terrified of silence. They flinched at sudden movements and refused to be separated. Emily wouldn't let go of Aaron's hand. Jonah screamed when a nurse tried to take his temperature. Maya refused to sleep unless the lights were on and the door open. They were kept in observation for 10 days, evaluated by psychologists. Still, answers were scarce. Finally, on the 11th day, Emily spoke. It wasn't what anyone expected. She said they had been taken to a place underground. Not by a man, not by any person at all, by a sound. She described a low hum, almost like a song, that came from the trees just as the sun dipped that evening. A vibration in their bones, a pull behind the eyes. Then darkness, then walls of stone, and always the humming. She said they had been kept in rooms that shifted, sometimes narrow, sometimes wide. With no light, no time, only the sound. They never saw their captor, but it watched. Always watched. The others confirmed it. Pieces aligned, but nothing made sense. Theories were formed. Mass delusion, trauma response, buried memories. But no one could explain how they'd survived, or how they had ended up, 6 months later, sitting in an abandoned cabin miles from the place they disappeared, with no memory of walking there, no recollection of escape, and no tracks in the snow outside. The case went cold again. No fingerprints, no fibers, no leads. The town tried to move on. The families never did. Years passed. The children grew, but were never quite the same. Quiet, distant, bound to one another by something none of them could explain. Their nightmares were identical. Their drawings nearly matched. Always tunnels. Always eyes in the dark. Always that hum. Then, in 2005, 6 years after the nightmare began, construction crews clearing land for a new housing development stumbled across something. Near Echo Ridge, a tunnel, old, hand-carved, nearly collapsed. Within it, a single room, smooth walls, burn markings, a pile of children's shoes, and a sound, faint but unmistakable, emanating from the far end. A low, steady hum. When authorities returned the next day, the tunnel had collapsed completely, swallowed whole, just like the children. And the truth, whatever it was buried again. But not gone. Never gone. For a long time after the tunnel was found, silence ruled again. There were no public statements from the families, no press conferences, no police briefings. The parents of the 4 children, now teenagers, refused interviews. They had learned the cost of publicity. Whispers came from the edges that someone at the county records office had filed an order to suppress all blueprints of the forest tunnels. That 2 construction workers had quietly quit their jobs and left town within a week of the discovery, and that one of the deputies who had first entered the chamber was admitted to psychiatric care less than a month later. No one knew what exactly had been found beneath Echo Ridge, or what had been heard. But those closest to the case noticed something more unsettling. The children, Emily, Aaron, Maya, and Jonah, had started to change again. It was subtle at first. Emily, now 18 and set to graduate, stopped showing up for class. She'd sit in the driveway in her old car, parked but running, staring through the windshield for hours. Aaron would wake up at 3:13 a.m. every night on the dot, drenched in sweat, convinced he'd heard that same low hum outside the window. Maya began to draw obsessively. Charcoal tunnels, dozens of pages of nothing. But curved walls and stick-figure children standing inside shadows. Jonah, always the gentlest of them, got into 3 fights in a single week. Their parents tried everything: therapy, medication, grounding them, smothering them with love. Nothing worked. The connection between the 4 of them remained unbroken, but it had changed, hardened into something more like a pact than a bond. They rarely spoke unless they were all in the room. They rarely smiled. And all of them, at one point or another, told their parents the same sentence, in the exact same tone, like it had been memorized. We didn't escape. The parents dismissed it as metaphor. Trauma. A cry for help. But something in their eyes, something deep, ancient, and bruised, made even the most rational adults lie awake at night. That spring, one of the Martins' neighbors, a retired schoolteacher named Gladys Croft, made a police report. She claimed she had seen 4 teenagers, barefoot and dressed in white, walking across her lawn at dawn, heading toward the forest line. Their eyes were black, she insisted, like dolls. Officers found nothing. The woods gave up no prints, no fibers, no signs of passage. But that report, ignored at the time, would later become the first crack in a series of chilling, connected events. On May 9, 2005, just under a month after the tunnel collapse, an assistant at the Dorley Public Library discovered something tucked into an old historical ledger. It was a journal entry, faded but legible, dated August 3, 1901. Today, the Jacobs children are gone, disappeared at dusk. 4 of them, all cousins. No signs left behind. Their mother said she heard them humming before they vanished into the ravine behind the orchard. Search parties have found nothing. Reverend says it's the forest again. Like before. That single paragraph, handwritten in a forgotten ledger, echoed with eerie familiarity. The Jacobs children had vanished the same way the Martin and Reyes kids had. For cousins. No evidence. A hum. A forest. Local historian Miranda Kellogg dug deeper. She unearthed 3 more nearly identical cases, all in Dorley or the surrounding counties, going back as far as 1874. Always groups of 4. Always cousins. Always children. Every 24 to 26 years. And always the same signature. No signs of struggle. No trace. No explanation. And in one chilling case from 1950, a survivor. A single girl, age 13, found wandering the woods after 6 months missing. She'd been institutionalized and never spoke again. Her name, Evelyn Reyes, Elena Reyes' great-aunt. The coincidence was too heavy to ignore. Miranda contacted the Martin and Reyes families, but her calls were never returned. She submitted her findings to the Dorley Police Department. The documents were acknowledged, then quietly filed away. But that didn't stop her. She wrote an article, then another. Local papers refused to publish. National outlets ignored her. She created a blog. Then she disappeared. On July 2, 2005, Miranda's apartment was found empty. Door unlocked. food on the stove, computer running. Her calendar had a single note written on the date. Echo Ridge, 4 p.m. She has never been found. In the months that followed, the town began to suffocate under paranoia. Parents stopped letting their children play outside. The woods were fenced. Echo Ridge was declared off-limits. Property values dropped. Tourists stopped coming. Even Halloween was canceled that year. Inside their homes, the four families spiraled in private. Elena Reyes started attending Mass twice a day. Roberto took to sleeping in a chair with a shotgun by the door. Jennifer Martin, once a kindergarten teacher, now spent most of her time chain-smoking on the back porch, watching the woods with vacant eyes. Mark built a concrete wall around their backyard and installed motion-activated lights in every corner. But none of them knew what to do about the children. They were slipping, not into violence or chaos, but into something colder, stranger, as if whatever had once tethered them to the world was slowly unraveling. One night in late August, Emily stood in the middle of the living room, looked at her mother and father, and said flatly, "It's coming back. We have to go." When Jennifer asked who, she replied, "The place. It remembers us." The doctors said it was psychotic delusion, dissociative memory fragments. But Jennifer wasn't so sure. Not after what she heard the next night. At precisely 3:13 a.m., she woke to a sound, a low, steady hum. It wasn't coming from outside. It was coming from inside the house, from the floorboards, from the walls. She ran to her children's rooms. Emily was gone. So was Aaron. Frantic, she called the Reyes. Maya and Jonah, gone too. The town searched again. Every trail, every cave, every mile of forest. No one saw them leave. No one saw them taken. Cameras picked up nothing. Doors had been locked. Alarms untouched. There were no footprints, no broken windows, no sign of exit. It was as if they had been pulled back. Just like before. The sheriff said it was impossible, that maybe the kids had run away, that trauma had made them seek each other out and disappear. But the families knew better. It wasn't over. It had never been over. And when Jennifer found the note, scrawled in black ink on her kitchen wall, hidden behind a frame, her legs gave out. For words. It only takes four. That fall, the forest grew silent again. And this time, the silence wasn't waiting to be broken. It was waiting to return. Winter crept into Dorley that year like a shroud. The snowfall came early, and with it a kind of silence that felt deliberate, too complete, too absolute. The wind no longer howled. It whispered. The trees stood like sentinels, as if listening, as if waiting. By October, it had been nearly 2 months since the second disappearance of the Martin and Reyes children, now teenagers. Once again, the town spun through all its familiar motions. Search parties, helicopters, dogs, volunteers. National attention returned briefly, only to retreat when it became clear that no new information would be found. No ransom, no communication, no trace. Again, but this time, something was different. This time, people were afraid to speak it aloud, but they knew. This wasn't just a tragic coincidence. This was a pattern, a design. Mark Martin didn't say much after they vanished again. Not to the police, not to reporters, not even to Jennifer. He simply retreated into the basement and began building something. He refused to say what. Every morning, he would descend with a notebook under his arm and wouldn't come back up until midnight. The hammering, sawing, the strange metallic screeches. They became routine. Jennifer, meanwhile, began having dreams. Vivid, torturous dreams of the children standing in long, narrow halls carved from stone, their eyes wide and unblinking. Each night the dreams became more detailed. The place they stood, she began to recognize it. It wasn't just a product of her imagination. It was real. She started drawing it. Walls, angles, etchings, rooms that shifted when no one looked. And always a central chamber, circular, lined with mirrors, and in its center, a table of stone, its surface stained dark. At first, she didn't tell anyone. But when Elena came to visit one snowy morning in November, she froze at the sight of Jennifer's sketch. "I've seen this," Elena whispered. "I don't know how, but I have." The two mothers spent hours comparing nightmares. The same dreams, the same details, the same low hum that threaded through every image. When they confronted the police again, armed with their drawings and fear, they were met with sympathy and nothing else. No resources, no new ideas. Dorley had already emptied its pocket for them once. Twice now was just too much. So they turned inward. Jennifer, Elena, Mark, and Roberto made a pact. If no one would help them, they would go into the forest themselves. They started with records, old land maps, surveyor blueprints from the late 1800s, historical society documents. They discovered that beneath Echo Ridge and the surrounding forest, an expansive cave system stretched for miles. Abandoned mining tunnels, early settler routes, collapsed railway paths. Most were sealed or long forgotten, but some weren't. Mark's basement project was a replica. He had been recreating the room from Jennifer's dream in miniature. Every detail, every groove in the stone. He believed it was a map, not of direction, but of sequence. Places like this aren't bound by space, he muttered one night. They're bound by memory. On December 2nd, 2005, 6 years to the day since the children were found the first time, the four parents entered the woods together. They left at midnight. No flashlights, just candles as instructed in the dream. They walked for over an hour. No talking, just the sound of snow and breath. Then the humming started, low, faint, beneath their feet. Elena was the first to fall to her knees. Here, she whispered, her eyes wide and wet. It's here. Mark pulled a small spade from his coat and began digging. Snow, then dirt, then stone, and then hollow. The sound of metal scraping stone echoed deep. They uncovered a slab, a square panel, carved into the earth. At its center, a rusted ring. Jennifer reached for it without hesitation and pulled. A groan like the forest exhaling. The slab lifted. Beneath it, a staircase spiraling down. The air that rose was thick and warm. Damp. It smelled of dust, salt, and something harder to place, memory maybe, or time. One by one, they descended. The darkness was total. The candles did little to push it back. The walls were smooth stone, slick with condensation. The air grew heavier with each step. They reached the bottom after what felt like an eternity. And then, silence. Not just the absence of sound. The suppression of it, like being inside a tomb with no sky. They stood in a narrow hallway. At the end, a door, carved from stone. The moment Mark touched it, it opened. Not with a creak, but with a sigh. The room beyond was circular, identical to the drawings. Mirrored walls, a stone table at the center. Etchings lined the floor, some ancient, others fresh. And on the walls, smeared handprints. Small ones, children's hands. Jennifer crossed the threshold, heart hammering. Emily? She called out. Aaron? Maya? Jonah? No answer. The candlelight flickered violently. Then movement. A figure stepped into view. Thin, pale, eyes black and wide. It was Jonah, but not. He looked older, worn, but unscarred. He didn't blink. Then Maya appeared behind him. Then Emily. Then Aaron. All four stood silently, still as statues. Come home, Elena begged. Please. Maya's lips parted. Her voice was a whisper. We are home. Jennifer stepped forward, arms outstretched. You don't have to stay here. Whatever this is, whatever it wants, it can't keep you. Emily tilted her head. It didn't keep us. We stayed. Mark swallowed. What? Aaron answered, his voice hollow. Because it remembers us. Jennifer's breath caught. What is it? They didn't respond. Behind them, the hum grew louder. From the shadows behind the children, the walls began to shift. Stretch. The mirrors shimmered, revealing glimpses of other places, fields, cities, deserts, oceans. And then snapped back to stone. The room pulsed alive. And then a sound. Not hum now. A voice. Deep. Layered. Not in words, but in understanding. It had always been there. The forest. The place. The memory. It had waited. Watched. Chosen. The door slammed shut behind them. And suddenly, the room began to dissolve. The candles went out. Darkness swallowed everything. But the parents did not scream. They stood, arms out, reaching for their children, and found nothing. No skin, no bottoms, no presents, only stone. When rescue crews reached the forest clearing 2 days later, alerted by a local hiker who found a Martin family's car abandoned at the trailhead, they found no footprints, no trail, no evidence of where they'd gone. Only a single candle, still burning, beside an open hole in the ground. The tunnel had collapsed again, sealed in stone. The town of Dorley buried 4 more names. No funities, no unveils, just another mystery wrapped in silence. Just like before, only this time, there were 8. And deep beneath the earth, in a place beyond place, the hum continues. Calling, waiting. It only takes 4. Years passed. Seasons changed. The world forgot. But Dorley didn't. What had once been a quiet, forest-flanked town became a ghost of itself. Less than a town, more like a wound. Families left. Stores shuttered. Children were born and raised elsewhere. The woods grew thick and wild again, and Echo Ridge was finally marked off-limits by county ordinance. No one enforced it. No one needed to. People simply stopped going there. The 8 names, the children and their parents, became something like folklore. Not told in classrooms, but whispered between generations. Don't go into the woods. Don't follow the humming. Never wander past the old stone well. In 2011, a true crime podcast picked up the case. The Dorley 8 aired 3 episodes before being abruptly taken down. No reason was given. The hosts never released another season. Their final words, still echoed in cache transcripts, chilled those who read them. Some things don't want to be found. Some places are kept hidden not by mistake, but by will. We won't speak of this again. But the hum never stopped. Those who stayed in Dorley claimed they still heard it sometimes, low, beneath the wind, beneath the earth. A deep vibration that passed through bone and memory, reminding them that time doesn't always move forward. Sometimes it loops. In 2018, a state-funded geological survey of the region detected unexplained subterranean anomalies beneath Echo Ridge. Cavities that shifted location. Seismic irregularities with no epicenter. The reports were filed, then archived, then buried. When one of the survey team went missing a week later, his colleagues packed up their instruments and left without a word. Then, the dreams began again. This time, not just for the parents, not just for those close to the case, but for children born after. A 12-year-old girl named Grace Caldwell woke screaming in the night, claiming she'd seen 4 cousins with black eyes trapped in the stone room. Her parents dismissed it as imagination, but when she drew it, the chamber was identical to Jennifer Martin's old sketches, never publicly released. A boy across town, 8 years old, began humming tunelessly during class. When asked what he was doing, he replied, "The place is remembering me." By 2020, Dorley's population had dropped below 1,200. Most homes stood empty. Echo Ridge was fenced again, but the fence fell into disrepair. No one wanted to maintain it. No one wanted to go near. And still, people disappeared. Not in groups this time. Not just children. A mail carrier on a route. A trucker who stopped to rest in the woods. A hiker who wandered off the trail and was never seen again. Always near Echo Ridge. Always without a trace. By then, the county had stopped investigating. The files were quietly marked closed or inconclusive. A phrase began to circulate in local circles, whispered with hollow eyes and nervous glances, "It only takes 4. And then, in 2025, 26 years after the original disappearance, a letter arrived at the Dorley Historical Society. There was no return address, no postage mark, just a thick yellowed envelope placed directly in the museum's overnight drop slot. Inside was a photograph, black and white, faded. It showed 4 children standing in front of stone wall. 2 boys, 2 girls. Their expressions were hollow, their eyes black. The date on the back, August 2nd, 1901. Attached was a torn page from a journal. "We found them again. They remember too much. We must seal the door this time, not with stone, but with silence." That same week, A construction crew clearing land for a new development west of Echo Ridge unearthed a wooden box buried beneath 3 feet of clay. Inside were 8 items, 4 handmade necklaces and 4 photographs of the Martin and Reyes children, aged but unmistakable. Each photo had been taken in a different place. A field, a mountain, a shoreline, a city street. On the back of each was a single sentence. We are not lost. We are not taken. We are becoming. Forensics authenticated the photos. Experts confirmed the images were not manipulated. But no one could explain how the teenagers, gone for 2 decades, appeared older, aged appropriately, but unchanged in the eyes, as if something behind them still watched, still held them. And then, like before, the evidence vanished. The box was stolen from police custody. The digital backups erased by system failure. The photographer who examined the images disappeared en route to a press briefing. And the hum grew louder. Now, in the stillness of Dorley's forest, something waits again. The wind no longer rustles. The birds no longer sing. And deep beneath the ridge, the stone shifts, breathing. Not every door is meant to open. Not every echo fades. Some come back, stronger. And this time, it isn't just calling the children. It's calling everyone. You can stand at the edge of the trees. You can listen closely. And if you're quiet, if you're still, you'll hear it too. That low hum, that deep memory, that warning. It only takes 4. The following spring, long after the last leaf had dropped from the black maples of Echo Ridge, something stirred beneath the earth again. It began with static, not on radios, but in people. Voices became fuzzy. Memory faltered. Several Dorley residents began reporting time skips, moments where hours vanished. Entire days forgotten. One elderly man wandered into a diner, claiming it was 1987. When asked where he'd come from, he pointed to the woods and said, "Out the other side." The waitress didn't press further. People in Dorley had learned not to ask. But beyond the town, far beyond it, someone was still searching. That someone was Dr. Nadine Lux, a cognitive neuroscientist based out of Seattle. She had first encountered the Dorley case as a teenager when her older brother, a paramedic, was assigned to the Reyes family during the children's reappearance in 1999. He had come home shaking, pale, unable to explain what he'd witnessed. He died by suicide in 2001. Nadine never forgot. She dedicated her life to mapping memory anomalies. And Dorley was her white whale. In 2026, she quietly acquired land near the forest's edge. On paper, it was for soil testing. In reality, it was a self-funded investigation. She brought no team, trusted no institutions. She knew the story. Everyone who came too close either vanished or lost their mind. She wasn't afraid of either. What fascinated her most wasn't the disappearances. It was the preservation. The children who came back hadn't aged as they should. Something in that place, something in the hum, preserved what it touched, but at a cost. She began recording. On March 3rd, 2026, Dr. Lux entered the woods alone with a thermal camera, satellite phone, and a data-logging EEG headset. She followed no trail, no path, just the dream she'd had for 3 nights in a row. The same hallway, the same stone room, the same 4 figures. She walked for 6 hours through twisted underbrush and sinking earth. Then the forest changed. She couldn't say how, only that the air became heavier, the sky dimmed unnaturally, and her compass began spinning slowly counterclockwise. Then she heard it, not the hum, a voice, soft, not calling her name, calling something else, a memory. She began recording. "Time feels wrong here," she whispered into her recorder. "Not stretched or compressed. Folded, like I'm walking across memory instead of land." At 3:13 p.m., her EEG spiked. Her thermal cam picked up a faint humanoid shape just beyond visibility. Not moving, not breathing, watching, and then nothing. Her camera cut out. Her GPS scrambled. But her recorder continued. "There's a door here. I don't see it, but I know it's here. Like remembering a room you've never seen. A place you miss but never visited." At 3:46 p.m., her voice changed. "They're still here. All of them. But not as they were. They remember us. All of us. And remembering is how they pull. The recording ended with a sound. Not the hum. A chord. Musical. Layered. Like a symphony played beneath the world. She was never seen again. But the recorder, miraculously, made it back. Found weeks later on the porch of the Dorley Historical Society, wrapped in cloth, still warm. Inside the cloth, another photograph. A picture of Dr. Lux, standing in the mirror-lined stone room. Her eyes completely black. And behind her the 8. The 4 children. The 4 parents. All watching. None blinking. The photo's timestamp read, June 19th, 1999, for 17 p.m. The exact minute the original 4 disappeared. The tape was studied. The photo examined. No explicación. All attempts to trace its origin failed. But it started something. A pattern. That summer, dozens of similar packages began appearing across Washington. Each containing photos, old, faded, always of groups of 4. Always near stone chambers, tunnels, or strange reflections. The locations varied. The people were different. But the pattern never changed. Cousins. 4. Gone. Returned. Gone again. And always, always, always the hum. By autumn, the federal government dispatched a geological safety team to investigate seismic irregularities across the Pacific Northwest. Publicly, they issued a report on underground gas lines and tectonic tension. Privately, their data told a different story. Multiple resonance centers had been mapped across 5 states, each one aligned with a location tied to disappearances stretching back nearly 2 centuries. Each one beneath old forest. Each one active every 25 to 26 years. Each one humming. That winter, the map was leaked online. Red dots scattered across the country. Some in Washington, Oregon, Montana, Idaho, but also New York, Virginia, Texas, California, and one, just one, in the heart of Manhattan, marked only with the words, "Site sealed, unrecovered." The leak was dismissed as a hoax, a viral stunt, but those who had lived through Dorley knew better. The next spring, on June 18th, 2027, exactly 28 years since the first children vanished, a woman named Claire Ryland, 29 years old, collapsed on the sidewalk in Portland. Witnesses said she looked disoriented, speaking in what sounded like multiple voices. Her eyes bled. Her palms were covered in stone dust. She was rushed to the hospital. When doctors finally stabilized her, she asked for a pen and wrote 5 words on a napkin. It remembers too many now. Then she died. Her body was never claimed. No record of her existed in any government database. Her fingerprints didn't match any known identity. And when the coroner reviewed her x-rays, he found something else. Her bones were fused. Not calcified. Fused. No visible marró. As if she had never been born, but constructed. The hospital burned down 2 weeks later. Investigators said it was faulty wiring. Locals knew better. Dorley became one of dozens of towns where people no longer spoke of the woods, or the hum, or the 4. And so, the silence grew. But far beneath that silence, beneath the roots and stone and time itself, something waits. Something that remembers. Each cycle, it grows clearer. More conscious. It doesn't just feed on memory. It becomes it. That's the truth Dorley never understood. They weren't taken. They were rewritten. Their absence was an edit. Their return, a revision. The 8 were never meant to escape. They were meant to transmit, to seed the memory. And they have. Now it's not just in the woods. It's in the air, in the signal, in the back of your mind when you forget where you were going, or lose hours in thought, or wake up with a melody you don't remember hearing. It hums inside your walls, in your static, in your bones. And when it's ready, it won't need the forest anymore. It will come through the mirrors, through the screens, through the memory of the places that never were. It only takes 4, but it never stops at 4. Not anymore. Not this time, and not the next. Because now it remembers you.